Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on strengthening the mental fitness of veterans and their families, helping them transition from military to civilian life, and helping them overcome adversity. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen. And we are privileged to have former Air Force officer and current director of HeroesLinked, David Tenenbaum, with us today. David, a graduate of the University of California at San Diego and Embry-Riddle Aeronautics University in Florida, served as an Air Force intelligence officer for a little over 6 years. From 2009 until 2019, David worked in several organizations that included Synexus, We Are the Mighty, Rights Universal, and Bunker Labs. David currently serves as a director for HeroesLinked, a nonprofit that connects those serving veterans, their spouses, and Gold Star families with a national network of volunteer advisors for professional and career development, as well as educational, employment, and VSO resources. HeroesLinked just won the VETI Award at the 6th Annual Veterans Award Ceremony for helping veterans and their family members find employment. David is also the founder and CEO of Honor Media, a nonprofit media production organization and publishing platform for and about the veteran community. David, it's awesome to have you here. Welcome to Life After the Military.
Lee, thanks for that introduction. Howie, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to rapping. I dig this.
Hey, we do too, man. Yeah, this is going to be a good episode. I could already tell from our pre-show we're going to have a good time today. I got to be honest with you. So, David, you had a little over 6 years in military service as an Air Force officer and leader, where you led aircraft operations aboard a key intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, while also serving as a foreign area officer with demonstrated French and Hebrew proficiency. You deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Qatar, and the Pacific in support of Operations Enduring and Iraqi Freedom. Please share with our audience how these assignments impacted, they shaped you, and please share any stories you have about your time in the military, because that is a hell of a resume right there.
You bet. Thanks, man. I love that you can take 6 years of like challenge, growth, strife, stress, and just condense it into seconds worth, which is nothing in contrast to Mr. Cohen's 20 plus years in Uncle Sam's Army. I don't even want to fathom how many stories you have from there, but
don't get him started, because then it's going to be Life After the Military, Howie Cohen, episode 6. and no, I'm just kidding. We do love hearing his stories, but today is all about you. Absolutely.
I was really lucky. I know there's a lot of folks when we leave the military and we take off the uniform. I think there is a transition that a lot of us do follow, not just physically with employment and relocating and family and the veteran identity, but I think there is one that happens like mentally. It's almost like it's like death, where they're like the 5 established stages of mourning and death and more. And I think we do the same thing of, oh, I'm still strongly attached to the military and I'm still military-esque in my mind, and then I'm embracing my veteran identity. And then maybe I'm a veteran advocate, and then eventually it's a long past issue for me, and I'm now just a civilian doing other things with new family or new friends or new community or new job. And of course, it doesn't have to be that way, but I know that our veteran journey, although very similar, I know that for me, my experience was different than many others. And I was privileged. I mean, I was privileged in the Air Force. I was privileged to be an officer. I was privileged to be an aviator. I was privileged to have my office at 30,000 feet. And where guys below, like the Howie Cohens of the world, were on the ground, giving each other the squeeze and kicking down doors and looking for bad guys, I was literally drinking Diet Coke and saying left, right, straight, up, down, faster and slower. So I know that not all military experiences are the same. And I'm thankful that mine was what it is, because it allows me to do what I'm doing today. So that's my big gratitude for having served in the military, my big perspective.
I think it's important to note real quick, man, whether, I don't care if it's 5 years or 50 years, if you served, you served, right? Yeah. And we've had guests on this show that have served less than a decade, and some that are still serving, for lack of a better word, right? So for anybody on this show, anybody listening, service is service. We had a great guest on a few weeks ago that said, don't say thank you for your service, thank you for volunteering. And we'd say that to you right now as well.
Cool. Well, hey, David, I'm going to tell you this quick story with nothing but love intended, okay?
Here we go.
So I just want you to picture this, right? I'm in a I'm in a Ranger patrol on the ground, like you just described. And I'm in what's called the Tactical Operations TOC 1, which is the command and control section for a Ranger battalion. And we have a TOC 2. So we're second in the line of movement behind a Ranger company. And we're moving through somewhere in the United States on a training mission. And of course, we have an Air Force component as part of our TOC, right? Because God forbid, if we come under some kind of enemy contact, we want to bring in the tactical air, cover to help us, right? So we have an Air Force fighter pilot, and we have an Air Force NCO as part of the TOC. And so typically what happens when you're moving through the wood line, right? You take a knee, you take a rest, and every time that we take a rest for more than just 30 seconds or a minute, we form what's called a cigar-shaped perimeter, and we have 100% security. So everybody is facing out. So if somebody were to come and try to overtake us, we have the ability to protect ourselves.
Sure. We do the same thing at Air Force golf courses. With
that's exactly right.
No one can penetrate except.
That's exactly right.
I get it. Keep it coming.
So we take a knee, and now I'll tell you, the Air Force NCO had no issues with any of this, but when we went into the security perimeter portion, I could literally hear the officer say, "What? You want me to do what? You want me to get on my stomach and face my weapon out?" And so that was my first introduction to an Air Force officer in an infantry combat unit. But I love you, man. So
yeah, that officer represented us well. There is no reason to be on our stomachs whatsoever.
By the way, when we finished the mission, we normally would go to a hangar. And that's where we would sleep until we got extracted. And then the second thing that officer says, "What? You want me to sleep on the floor of this hangar? I don't get a freaking hotel room." So yeah, he really endeared himself to us. But the NCO was awesome, man. He was absolutely awesome. But no, hey, listen, I say that completely out of love, because listen, we're all on the same team. It's one team, one fight, and I was privileged to have served with men and women from all services. So it's really cool. Hey, so getting back on track, David, listen, you transitioned from the Air Force. You held a number of positions that Lee mentioned in the introduction. So what I'm interested in is if you can just describe, number one, how did you personally prepare yourself for your transition to go from the military to whatever you did, and first out of the military into the corporate world. And then you actually had a number of jobs, which meant you transitioned not just from the military to a company or organization, but you had an ability or the experience of transitioning to several. I would love for you to share with our audience your experience of how you prepared for those transitions, what went well, what did not go well. Looking back on it, what would you do differently? What kind of advice and guidance and mentoring can you give to the men and women who are getting ready to transition now?
Yeah, great question, and one that's applicable to 200,000 plus folks every year. It seems like when they leave the military and they begin their civilian or veteran journey. I was really lucky in the military. We have an incredible culture in the Air Force, and we were constantly being groomed and constantly expected to be successful. And all the support was there. All the support was there. All the accolades was there, and all the expectations were there to be successful. So whether it was fitness tests, whether it was professional education, whether it was civilian education, whether it was deployments, whether it was sustainability for deployments. And so the Air Force trained me well as a good airman, and I had this great Air Force resume. And when I was preparing to leave, I thought, I will be recognized immediately with this stellar resume in the civilian place, and I'll be hired by the Boeings, the Northrop Grummons, or by any of the defense firms, or by any company I apply to, because they'll see how well the Air Force has trained me to do what's expected of me, and to do it in a dynamic, difficult environment, not only stateside, but in the most demanding circumstances around the world, Kabul, Iraq, you name it. especially those pools and Qatar and the ice cream. It's very demanding out there in Al-Udeid at Doha. So I had a misunderstanding of what transition would be like. And when I started my transition process, I quickly realized that getting a job wasn't as simple as see job, apply for job, interview for job, and go forth and conquer. I don't know why I had that misunderstanding. No one ever said that to me. No one who transitioned beforehand ever said, oh, by the way, you'll get picked up in a heartbeat. But I had a misunderstanding of the value and significance of what we had just accomplished in uniform. And I think that's the point I'd want to share, which is when we're in uniform, we have this incredible community and culture and unity of language and purpose and mission, uniform, hair and clothing standards. Our spouses, our family, our friends understand what we're doing. They salute us. They thank us for our service. We get medals and accolades. And so we're put in a place of comfort to help us during the more demanding missions. And I think when I went into the civilian space, I didn't realize that so few people would, besides a token gesture of thank you for your service, which I appreciate, would really understand the significance of what we just accomplished, or more importantly, the significance of our character or our experience or our capabilities, what we can bring to the new team. And so there was what I thought was a tremendous devaluation of my skill set and experience in my past 6 years when I transitioned. And so the lesson I learned very rapidly was I can't lead with Air Force officer, 6 years, most deployed member of my squadron, Jerome O'Malley Reconnaissance Award winner. I can't lead with I was an ISR planner at the Air Operations Center in Kabul in a joint environment. I can't lead with any of the things that aren't more generally understood outside the military space. And even within the military, I mean, how you could tell me, Rangers could talk to me all day long and be like, I did this in the Ranger platoons or Ranger battalions. And I'm like, okay, you wore Army uniforms and you're a badass. Like, that's what my mind generally goes to. Or someone could tell me what they did in another branch. I'm like, you're a badass, but it's not crystal clear how to interpret that in the civilian space. And so my long-winded thought here is sometimes it might be best to keep our experiences a little closer in rather than expect everyone else to be able to understand how valuable they are to us. They may not understand the loss of life we experience. They may not understand the injuries that we sustained or our peers sustained. They may not understand the sacrifices that our family went through. They might not understand the belly crawling on 5 meter and 25 meter checks and protocols and SOPs. And so to lead with that might be, it might not be a way to connect with quote our audience or our new community. And so that was one of the hardest things for transition that I had to go through, was shedding a little bit of that military identity and adopting more of the, hey, your company focuses on this. I would love to be part of that mission, that community. And here's what I understand about your products, your services, your corporate culture, your roles, your corporate philanthropy. I'm enamored with what your company is, and almost minimizing my time in the military unless it directly relates to their company. And I say that again, I'll taper with this. I say that because it's really difficult to turn down what meant so much to ourselves and what was so much of our identity for the past 4 years or 30 years. And that's not something I think we're encouraged necessarily to do. And I guess this is the last thing I'll say about it. I'm not saying other veterans should hide their military identity. I know some folks will actually conceal it on their resumes because maybe they're a little bit fearful about the HR team or the company saying, do they have post-traumatic stress? Are they a liability versus an asset? When America only sees veterans through the eyes of the news or films that depict us in an inaccurate and unflattering light, I get how that can be a stereotype that's not in our best interest. And so, but I would say, if a word of wisdom or a word of advice from my point of view is present the best components of our military experience as they relate to our next venture in life, and maybe keep those tire kicking war stories, for those who maybe better understand them or more receptive to them, or at the best time to share those?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal advice. And it seems to be, we always look for trends, commonalities that come out in these types of conversations. And one thing that is clearly coming out as a common piece of advice is how can you take your military experience and translate it in a way that will resonate with whomever you're seeking a job with, whether it's in corporate America, with a nonprofit, whatever it may be. There are so many things that, and I completely agree with you. I know Lee does as well. We know the quality of the veterans and the value they can add to any organization that a man or woman in uniform can add. But the key is, let's get out of the military speak and let's translate it, what we did and what we're capable of doing, in a way that speaks to corporate America or the nonprofit world or whatever it is that you're going to. So that is absolutely a terrific advice, David. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think that's spot on.
I want to comment too, David, because you brought up something that I wanted to pull a thread on, as Howie would say. My experience in the military is somewhat unique, is that I was a male military spouse to my wife, who was an officer in the Air Force for 7 years. So I was able to observe a lot, right, from a unique perspective. And now I'm an entrepreneur that hires veterans. You said something that I found very intriguing in your answer, which was you don't know where you got the impression that you were just going to go out and get a job, but it was there. I know where you got that from. All right. And I'll tell you why, because it comes back to this phrase: show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Right. The military is not perfect in any way, but it is the greatest team on the planet. And, having lived on a military base overseas, having been around military, you are surrounded by high performing people with a clear expectation and an understanding of what your job is. And when you move to a job, you are expected to do your job. So when you're in that for 7 years or 25 years, of course you feel like you're going to move on and find a position. And this is the truth. And this is something I've actually never said. And you actually brought this to my attention here. I think it's a really important point. Going back to what I said a minute ago, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Most veterans leave the military and go to an incredibly underserved environment of people who probably are not fully happy with their lives, or are struggling, or are negative. You talked about the current climate. Most people are negative. Yeah. And now you're hanging out with those people. Should we be shocked that veterans have a hard time transitioning from a mental standpoint and a mental fitness point of view when they're walking into a country that, for lack of a better word, is not the most optimistic place in the world right now? All right. I'm not going to go with whether or not it should be. Probably should be, but that's not the point. Right. And I think that's an important thing to remember. When you transition, you are going from the highest performing team on the planet to not that. Yeah. I'm not trying to say there aren't high performing teams out in the country in the civilian world, but there's no way you're going to match that level in the military. Yeah. So it is not a surprise to me, because my wife went through the same thing. I think Howie did too. You leave the military thinking, man, I'm a high performing individual who's on a high performing team. People are going to want me. You know what I mean? And the truth is, most companies couldn't tell you a high performing teammate.
No kidding.
If they had one, right? And that is the value that military veterans bring. And Howie just echoed that: the team level, the teamwork, the understanding of how to accomplish a mission. But I wanted to I hope I did kind of connect the dots there, because that wasn't a surprise to me at all. Yeah. And I just think that says a lot about the current climate. And that's something that veterans need to, or not veterans, transitioning military need to understand they're walking into, and find the right people. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Who are you going to be working with is far more important than what you're doing, in my belief. Yeah.
You're a better subconscious than my own subconscious. And thanks for clarifying that. And you look, you hit the nail on the head, and I didn't voice it, and you're right. I had a top secret SCI clearance, the highest clearances there is, and one of the highest clearances there are in the military. I was the highest deployed member of my squadron. I'd completed my master's with like a 4.0 in one of the shortest times possible. Wow. I completed my professional military education, like squadron officer school, literally like 30 days after I pinned on captain. I got a private pilot license. Like I just tested proficient in French and Hebrew, which I've been studying for. Like I said, I got a secondary job code as a foreign air officer. Like I was doing everything I could all the time to excel. And like, to your point, I just assumed that, like the environment I was in, that would be either recognized or that would allow me to go from strength to strength, and it didn't. And
right.
I think you got a great point there. You know, I've heard it expressed as your network is your net worth, or like show me the 5 people that are closest to you, and I'll show you your future, sort of thing.
Right.
And you're right. I took for advantage the Dimitri Cantors of the world, who was born in Russia, I think, came here when he was young, a UCLA grad, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, who was an electronic warfare officer. We were in the same shop together. He was getting his master's, but he was also investing his money in rental properties and purchasing. And that guy was he was excelling within the military and personally and professionally. I took for advantage him and the Karolos Zurdoses, he's now in 05. I think he's in Turkey, and how he was excelling. And I took for advantage our squadron, which was overwhelmingly a bunch of officers. We had about 130 folks, but it's about 100 of us were officers as pilots, navigators, electronic warfare officers. And we had some staff. And I just assumed that because of how we performed in that environment and because of our network, that what would happen afterwards. And I hadn't considered, I'm going from an alpha-esque community where everyone's focused on mission success and self-improvement to the civilian sector. And I don't know what I'm going to face there. Difference of work ethic or standards, or enforceability of those work ethics or standards. We used a lot of shame in the military if someone couldn't perform, and it wasn't outright, but it was implied, where if you couldn't go from co-pilot to aircraft commander to instructor pilot to evaluator pilot, what are you doing in the military? Air Force, go fly drones. Sort of thing. Or if you're a navigator and you can't succeed, like, what are you doing as an aviator? You're literally a shitbag. And so there's always this incredible expectation and burden of perform or get the fuck out, because lives are on the line.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's espoused in all professions throughout America.
This is what you'll both find funny. And I don't think I've ever told Howie this before, but you're bringing it up, and you're both going to have a good laugh at this, right? When my wife joined the Air Force, I come in, I've coached college hockey. I was a minor league prospect. I'm an author. I've got a master's. Air Force people did not give a shit about that. So it was the complete opposite, right? So again, like, this is why I say being a male military spouse is unique, right? They didn't care about my resume, right? They didn't care what I've done because it had nothing to do with the mission. And they were 100% right. Now, but what they did know is how to treat each other with respect, be good teammates, and work hard. And I could do that. And as soon as I transitioned from, not that I was bragging about my resume or anything like that, but as soon as I realized that none of the stuff I had done mattered, but my ability to work with them and support them, I always joke that male military spouse is the lowest rank in the military. All right. But as soon as I understood how that correlated with them, I was accepted with open arms, man. And look, some of my lifelong friends, including the person on your screen with us, were from the military, because that's the people I wanted to surround myself with because of the code, because of the understanding of teamwork. But that's how I knew what I was saying to you, because it was completely the opposite for me, where my civilian experience had absolutely no application within a military, area. So anyway, I thought that was funny. I wanted to tell you guys that too.
Well, listen, you brought up another thing, David, in what you said is, look, one thing in the military, and Lee said it, I think you said it, the military is not perfect, and I'm not saying it is, but we have standards, we have accountability, and the ones who do it right, the leaders who do it right, they hold themselves and those around them accountable to those standards, and in many cases hold themselves to a much higher standard. And my personal experience, and I've had, what have I had now? 8, 12, so almost 15 years now outside the military. I will tell you, I see more places where that does not exist than where it does exist. Yeah. Right. And so that's another thing I think you wrestle with is that, and Lee's exactly right. It's a combination of a team bond that we have in the military that doesn't exist in the corporate or civilian world. The lack of real
doesn't exist yet. That's right.
We're on a mission. That. We're on a mission to fix that. Yeah. The lack of effective leadership in a lot of corporate America and other places outside of corporate America And clearly, the inability to clearly communicate standards, expectations, responsibilities, and hold people accountable. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. So, hey, let me shift back to get us a little bit on track. So, David, it's fascinating to me when I do research on our guests. I actually really enjoy it a lot. And I noticed in my research, you took a board member position with the Department of Veteran Affairs. Mm-hmm. And I'm very interested to understand why you took that position, what you, and do you still actually hold that position as well?
I don't.
Okay. But I'd love to hear what prompted you to take that position. What did you do? And maybe you can share that experience with our audience as well.
You bet. I have to admit, coming into this, when I was in high school, American political systems was one of my weakest subjects. It was like sixth period at the end of the day, and there's beautiful views in sunny California. No one was paying attention. So I admit that my knowledge of government structures and cabinet agencies was a little limited. And when I separated from the Air Force, the VA, we had DOD taking care of us, obviously, and DOD did a phenomenal job when I was in uniform, but I wasn't really aware of VA's role to the extent that I am today. And so there was a massive education component for me about learning about VA and VHA and VBA, and then NCA, the National Cemetery Administration, and not only the medical benefits, but the survivor benefits, disability pay, GI, voc rehab, you name it, goes on and on and on. And the more I learned about VA, I learned two things. One was, I don't think, what VA serves about 9 million veterans of the roughly 20 million veterans. I don't think all veterans are really aware of the extent of services that are provided by VA. And I also don't think, for those services that are provided, I don't think our community really understands how best to get involved. We're just recipients of the care or the services, and not maybe advocates or change agents for the VA. I've never said to someone, I have recently, but I never said to someone before, you should go work at VA if you care for veterans. Or, hey, you're a badass doctor, you're a badass researcher, you're a badass administrator, you have an MPA, go work at VA. That isn't part of our common culture. Like, go work at SpaceX, or go work at Tesla, or go work at, the defense firms. And so long story short, I got more and more involved with VA locally here in Los Angeles, and then somewhat at VACO, at VA Central Office in DC, by some connections and by some people, and somewhat through Honor Media, my own nonprofit. And eventually the opportunity presented itself to join one of these FACs, these federal advisory committees, these boards. And VA does do an excellent job at this, which is they have, I think, about 39 FACs, or federal advisory committees, or these boards, where they construct a group of leading individuals or thought leaders. They put them together and they focus on specific subjects, whether it's LGBT issues, whether it's Vietnam veterans, whether it's employment issues, you name it. There's 39 of them. And ours was, here in Los Angeles, was the VCOEB. And give me a second, the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board. And it was primarily responsible for the oversight and recommendations of LA's master plan. I wish that name would be changed considering our own background. But the master plan as it relates to the construction and housing of roughly 1,100 units on VA property here in LA. And so our whole role was nothing more than to make suggestions to the Secretary of VA saying, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? Or here's what we're hearing from everyone involved at the local level. Can you endorse or support or consider this, or allocate VA funding, allocate VA policy? How can you help take this property of 388 acres and make it as it was intended to be used to house homeless veterans or veterans?
Wow. And listen, I'll do some research on this as well, because what you're prompting in my mind, and Lee knows this about me, is not only am I passionate about what we're doing with Charlie Mike, but something that I am really, really passionate about. And you and I spoke about this the other night in DC, is how do we change this trend of veteran suicide? So I assume that there must be a veteran advisory committee or committees that deal with veteran suicide, right? There has to be. So I need to do more research and link up with those folks and bring them onto this show, because we have got to stop this shit. I got to tell you, we have got to turn this trend around. And it just, I mean, it just really, really upsets me that we're dealing with this. And I think we were talking about this the other night. And I mean, absolutely no disrespect to General Mark Milley. He's a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal officer. But I saw a LinkedIn post the other day that said he, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he's going to stand up a committee to look into this. And I just blew a gasket, right? I said, yeah, we don't need another freaking committee. Yeah. What we need is freaking action. And but you know what? I need to put my action where my mouth is. And so I got to figure out how I can get more involved in that. And I'll look into that. So I appreciate I didn't even know that existed, but I'll find out more about it. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, look, let's address this head on. I think veteran suicide, complicated subject, easy solutions. And this is coming from someone who, like, my father took his life when I was 2. After surviving the Holocaust and after creating families and more, and he took his life at the exact age I am today. Jeez. And every single day that rings through my mind pretty damn loudly, because as I embrace my own damn adulthood and the trials and tribulations that we face daily as adults, and of course the previous years last few years have been more stressful for many of us than ever in our entire lives, that rings through. And I think from a genetic perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a self-supporting perspective. But I'll say it again, I think, what's the classic line? Whatever. So I'll say, I think some of the biggest issues that the VA faces, that the veteran community faces, that the veteran advocacy space face, is simply reaching the people who need the services themselves. And I launched Honor Media, and I'm not trying to sell Honor Media or say Honor Media is a solution, but the concept was I launched Honor Media as a nonprofit media organization for and about the veteran community to say, all these VSOs, all these veteran advocacy organizations, these veteran serving organizations, government, civilian, nonprofit, academic, employers, there are folks out there who've responded in kind to veteran suicide or veteran traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress or military sexual trauma to injuries, you name it. There's thousands upon thousands of orgs, and HeroesLinked, of course, is one of them, thank goodness. But and then I'll say this from a systemic point of view, the problem is, one, the structure, which is nonprofits are foolishly evaluated by program dollars going, or donor dollars going into programs and services. And then we tout things like 92% or 95% or 95 cents on every dollar is dedicated to programs and services, which is great. So donors can know that their money is being well spent. The downfall of that is, though, how much money can be spent for marketing for those programs and services. Like, the best kept secrets don't help anyone. And so you've got people like the music community who are self-aggrandizing, saying, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. You've got Coca-Cola pushing out something that really isn't the healthiest for us, the tunes of billions of dollars of marketing to compete with, marketplace. And then you've got people who've literally helped solve traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma, post-traumatic stress, veteran suicide. And they're like, well, how much can we possibly have an ad for an ad spend? Or we're not getting picked up by NBC or Fox or CNN, or we're not getting picked up by a lot of places. So this is a long-winded way of saying, A, your show itself is very, very, very helpful to veteran well-being and to empowering the veteran community through supporters and allies and advocates. B, VA, of course, has its suicide prevention office and its treatment programs, and statistically, less veterans take their lives under the care of VA than otherwise. But 3, I think it's how to reach that veteran who may be considering or contemplating, or even beforehand, to say, wait, the world wants you here. We need you here. And here's all the resources and services that are imminently available without retribution, without consequence, without even dollars. And all you have to do is either literally pick up the phone and thank God this exists, or, I'm so sorry, Or someone's going to pick up the phone for you, and then we're going to, literally transport you to either inpatient services or outpatient services, and you'll be in good company. But not everyone is empowered. Not everyone knows about these services and programs. And then two, I think it does take an act of incredible courage and self-assessment and vulnerability to say, I'm now ready to address something that's the most painful part of my entire existence.
Yeah. And I will tell you, it's one thing, and we talked again about this Friday night. That's why I think there's so much potential synergy between HeroesLinked and Honor Media and Pivotal Moments, is because what we want to do is create the content that will educate, that will entertain, that will inspire, that will motivate people to take action. Yeah. That's the whole. I mean, all this doesn't serve a god darn if people aren't taking action.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we want to be able to do. I know that's what you want to do with Honor Media, and that's why I'm very excited that you're going to meet with Bob Morgan here in a couple of days when he's out on his trip in LA. But it's all about getting people to take action. We had a phenomenal podcast recording last Thursday night with a small group out of the Boston area. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that recording with Lee. Lee, this is a group that Lee introduced me to, Skate for the 22. And a very interesting concept came out of this. So essentially what they do is they use ice hockey as a conduit to bring veterans back into being part of a team where they have a purpose, where they're cared about, where it's kind of replicating everything that they did in the military, just with hockey, right? And they told an amazing story, and I'm going to share this, even though we haven't yet posted this podcast. There was a guy that literally was going to take his life. And he was part of one of these hockey teams, and somebody from the hockey team happened to call him and say, "Hey, Howie, you're coming to the game tomorrow night, right?" And he hesitated for a second, and then he said, "Yeah, I'll be there." Had he not gotten that call, there is probably, I would say, what do you say, Lee, 99, 100% chance the guy would have taken his life?
The story went that he was on his way to do it, and he had planned everything to the point of taking care of his family. He was ready to do it, and he was on his way to do it. That's how.
Yeah. So and had he not received that call and made that commitment to go to the hockey game, he would not be with us today. And the point that came out of it was that these two young men who had started this organization realized that if they can create an environment that replicates some of the things that folks in uniform, what motivated them and excited them, if they could replicate that, and again, they used ice hockey as a conduit to do it. Could be anything. It could be any sport. It could be any endeavor. It doesn't have to be ice hockey, but that's the thing they use. But the whole point is, if we can create those kinds of opportunities for folks to stay connected, to be involved, to know that they're part of a team, maybe that helps eliminate some of this trend that we're experiencing right now. So
I think that's what the Team Red, White, and Blues. That's what the Team Rubicons. That's what the Mission Continues. I think that's what those organizations excel at, with national reach and national chapters. And there's hundreds, thank goodness, there's hundreds of the Skate for the 22s, or there's hundreds of the Team Rubicons in micro environments, whether it's San Diego, whether it's in Arkansas, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be a veteran organization that focuses on veteran well-being through, and then name their mission. I mean, there's Soldiers Who Salsa, there's Vet Toga, veterans in yoga, there's Veteran Kayaking Association. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these solutions essentially that exist out there, and the programs are funded. So all the veteran needs to do is either become aware of them, or have a friend or family who's a veteran advocate say, let's go consider the following. I now take that regrettably, that tougher love perspective, because I think all of our hearts have been broken by the loss that the community has faced. Our friends, they're the folks we deployed with, they're people we know, they're people we don't know. And I think I've moved from the in stages of development have moved from the mourning and understanding and frustration and fury to the let's just fucking solve this, because this isn't something that we can't not solve. Exactly. And that's where I'm now on the let's just make everyone aware of the damn solutions. And my biggest argument when people say, why do we need an Honor Media, or why do we need the Charlie Mikes, or why do we need all these podcasts, or why do we need all this media about the veteran solutions? I'll say, because you don't know. That's number one. You don't know, and the veteran doesn't know. And they'll be like, why should I ever pay, from a civilian, pay attention to solutions about the veteran community? I'm like, well, if you're not donating, if you're not working at the VA, if you're not a volunteer at any of these volunteer orgs, then maybe we can ask you to help solve one of America's biggest crises, and saying, just take a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of information, store it in that cerebellum, and keep it at the ready. So if you ever see a veteran or ever hear a veteran, be like, hey, have you heard of Sparta? Have you heard of Save a Warrior? Have you ever heard of Boulder Creek Retreat? Have you ever heard of, and be like, have you ever heard of Cohen Veterans Network? They provide free mental health counseling. Have you ever heard of, and it's, I think that's all I'm asking from the civilian community and from our veteran community. I'm asking our brothers and sisters to be like, yo, bro, we didn't have the chance to fail in the military. We don't have the chance to fail now. We can't do that to each other. Like, let's go. Everyone wants you here. Get dressed, get showered. Let's go. We got shit to do. And it includes a phenomenal life, not otherwise.
David, I'll add on to that two things. One thing you said that I think it's important to reiterate is part of the stigma is people say, well, those organizations are out there if they need it. And it goes back to what you said. That's not how it works. When you're in a deep depression, you're not looking for that most of the time. It needs to be brought to you, right? And I think you're right about the advertising, where we'll spend millions of dollars on soda, but how often do you see a veteran helpline advertised? So I think that's part of the big problem, is enabling people to not feel weird talking about, hey, these things exist if you need them. If you served in the military, or your spouse in the military, involved in the military in any way, someone that needs this. There's just no doubt in my mind. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is something somebody brought to my attention. I think it's actually important we share this with our audience. I'm naturally a pretty optimistic person, high energy. I enjoy myself. Okay. I enjoy my life. I'm very blessed to be that way. And I remember for the longest time when I viewed suicide growing up, and I'm making myself vulnerable here, I remember having how could anyone do that? How could anyone get to that point? How selfish. You hear these things, right? And as I got older, I realized, that's a pretty egotistic, stupid way of looking at it. And I did what I was taught, which was let me talk to someone who's been there and try and understand. And what I took out of that, and what I've learned, I spoke to someone who had contemplated it pretty heavily. And they said, I got to a point, and this was eye-opening for the audience. I want you to hear this. I got to a point where I thought everyone's life would just be better without me in it.
Wow.
Everyone. And that was shocking to me. I had never heard that kind of phrase before from anybody. And it changed the whole perception of it for me, because the truth is, there's probably never a scenario where everyone's happier if someone's gone. It's just not true. But the person believed that. He said, I believed that. And I just kind of was just getting up every day. And I was lucky enough that someone took me and brought me somewhere where I could get better. But he goes, I was going to do it because I didn't think anyone would be better. It wasn't selfish. It had nothing to do with my life being crappy or anything like that. It was this belief that everyone will be better off without me. They were actually being selfless in their own mind. That completely turned this upside down for me, right? And I think it's important to share that, because I think, again, I didn't understand. I never will understand, to be perfectly honest, and that's okay. All right. My point is that gave me such a perspective. Like, man, I was totally wrong about this, right? And when you see someone that's going that direction, and keeping in mind, someone contemplating suicide might have zero signs that they're doing it. That's another important thing. You've seen the pictures of people who have committed suicide, and hours before they look like they're the happiest person in the world, right? So it's a very delicate subject. It's one we do not know enough about, to be perfectly honest with you. And that if you are a civilian, like I am, like we all are now, you do have a responsibility to know and to be able to offer something. It's not just enough to say, well, that stuff's out there. They can find it. So I just wanted to share that, because maybe that enlightens someone. You're inspiring me to talk about it. I just thought it was important to bring up.
Well, and Lee, I will tell you, and it's not that I want to argue, but my experience is that there are signs, right? I guess there could be some small number where someone has hidden it so well that nobody saw it. But my experience is exactly the opposite. A lot of people saw it. And again, what we call in the military red flags, right? There were so many, anytime I've been around a loss of life, when we start investigating, when we start inquiring into what happened, there were so many red flags that for whatever reason, people either ignored, shied away from, and they did not act. And had they told someone, whether they themselves grabbed that person and carried them to someone who can help them, or talk to someone in the chain of command or at a leadership position, said, hey, I'm really concerned about so-and-so. I think he or she needs some help.
Absolutely.
The point being is, when you go back, my experience has been when you go back and investigate and inquire into it, people just did not act when they should have acted. And then they say, you know something, I saw this, and had I done this, maybe so-and-so would be with us today. That has been my experience. And I guess I would say to our audience, if you know someone who was in that kind of a mental state, please help them. And listen, whether they want the help or not, help them. Tell someone who can then intervene and help that person, whether they want the help or not, because we're going to lose that person if we don't. And that's what I mean by we got to act. We got to take action. So anyway, hey, listen, if you don't mind, I'm going to continue to move on, because honestly, we could spend, hours talking about this, and maybe we should, and maybe we ought to set something like that up in the future. But hey, David, kind of getting back to your experience. I know you work with Bunker Labs. I found that kind of interesting, and I would love for you to explain what Bunker Labs does, how, what you did there, and how you actually help veterans and their families in that position. Because I found it kind of interesting. I didn't even know about it.
Yeah. Howie, you said it earlier about the importance of leadership in whether it's in the military or in the civilian space. And I think one of the things that the military does do is we only have each other in uniform. And at some point we're going to go from private to sergeant to senior NCO. And when we were led, we now become the leaders of the community or of our. And so that's my long-winded setup for Todd Connor, who's a veteran himself, who after the military, he went to get his MBA, and he realized that, hey, military members, veterans, male spouses make great entrepreneurs. And throughout this nation's history, after war, when we've come home, when veterans have come home, many of us have gone on to launch our own ventures. And so he launched Bunker Labs as a national nonprofit to essentially foster entrepreneurship for military members, veterans, and mil families. And so he was able to create, and the organization continues quite strongly today. The organization essentially has 30 plus chapters in major U.S. cities. They've brokered relationships with WeWork, where they actually have a veterans in residence program, where it's a competitive application process where folks will essentially submit their venture, their business idea, whether it's yet to be formed or thriving, and they'll take part of a 6-month program, which happens like twice a year, where essentially they're with other like-minded individuals, and where the community and resources are there. There's a weekly huddle of accountability, as you said, and expectations, some from your own and from the program. And then there's also national opportunities of, it's pitching forward, as I had the chance to do myself, which is pretty awesome, or connecting with street shares by other Army veteran Mark Rockefeller and their quarterly pitch competition, whether it's funding for Macy's. And so essentially Bunker Labs is a national nonprofit focused on accelerating entrepreneurship for military members, veterans, and their spouses or male spouses. And so at the time they had, in all their cities, they had city leaders. And I hadn't gone through the program myself, went through the program myself as a veteran in residence, and then having provided some media to the local LA chapter, stills and video and more through my own nonprofit, eventually the opportunity was there to be part of it as a city leader. And so I joined as a city leader, which was a fascinating experience because how did we go through the 60 plus applications? How did we select? What were we selecting for? And then ultimately, what was my responsibility as a city leader, both from the program point of view, both from Bunker Labs' point of view, and my own level of integrity to help these entrepreneurs along in their journey. And there was something really profound when you get 14, 15 folks who all have their own venture having a CEO discussion, and Bunker Labs does have that program, CEO Circle. But when you get 14 or 15 of us talking of how are you guys succeeding on your marketing? How's your conversion rate for anything digital? Who are you using for your social media? What are you using for legal purposes? What are you using for HR? Who's doing your taxes, if applicable, sort of thing? What's your 5-year program? When are you going to be in the black? When are you going to start generating revenue? How do you grow? Who do you grow with? What are your risks and liabilities? And so it is a fascinating dialogue and community, which really does empower and accelerate someone who's got an idea to go forth and conquer, or who's already got an existing idea and then to leverage resources and grow. So
that's fascinating. And listen, what I would love, and we can talk about this after we stop recording, but I would love any introductions you can give me to leadership over there, because I would actually like to invite someone from that organization to come on our show and really talk specifically about what kind of offerings and services they provide to veteran entrepreneurs. That would be absolutely awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great org doing great things nationally.
Cool. So we talked a little bit about it in the intro. You currently work as a director at HeroesLinked. I would love you to talk about HeroesLinked, what the organization does, how they serve veterans. I want to again pass on my very sincerest congratulations for your reception of the Vetty Award for recruiting support that helps veterans. So talk about HeroesLinked, talk about how you help veterans. And I would love to learn more about how you actually competed for and won the Vetty Award. I think that's an absolutely stellar outcome for your organization and what you're doing for that organization.
You bet. So HeroesLinked is a national nonprofit program, 100% online, 100% free. The short answer is it's a better, more actionable version of LinkedIn. And essentially what we do is it's an online platform accessible from any device that connects those serving veterans, their spouses, and Gold Star families with a national network of volunteer advisors like Mr. Howie Cohen himself.
Haven't gotten a call yet, man. So maybe I need to change my picture, man.
I don't think that's going to help too much, bud. But maybe you should put in there that you're willing to lay on your stomach in a forest.
There we go.
In a cigar position.
I'll take up the perimeter. I'll take up the security perimeter for you, man.
The program. I'll say this about the program, and I'm a pretty damn big fan of it myself. And the program single-handedly creates an environment where advisor and advisee can connect and really have a candid dialogue. And it can be everything from and it's inconsequential. There's no retribution. It can be everything from hey, advisor, I've put in for 60 plus, jobs. I haven't gotten an interview. What's up? Oh, and by the way, I'm looking for a job, which means I'm not currently making money or my unemployment ran out. I'm getting a little disheartened. Part of the thing that I do have PTS or TBI. So I'm getting some service-connected, disability money, but things aren't going so well, and I'm slowly going down here. And so there's that one arc, and the advisor can be like, well, here's what I've noticed on your resume. Here's what I've noticed in your presentation to me. Have you tried the following? Or, hey, you know what? You're applying for this job when you're really better suited for this, or vice versa. Like, it's a safe place to have a very candid dialogue about career success and well-being. But there's everything from that component of hey, what's not working to oh shit. Hey, I'm so sorry about the light. Hey, I just separated from the military with 15 years experience. I have my college degree. I'm a high performer. I looked at the Deloittes of the world, or the KPMGs, or the Accentures. Hey, can I speak with you about corporate culture there and maybe any veteran initiatives or veteran hiring programs? Or, when I was debating between the 3 companies as a junior or as a physician, what would you recommend having worked there? Or, hey, could you endorse me? Or, hey, I saw a certain position. Do you think I'd be a good fit based on my experience? Or how can I tailor my experience to match that? I mean, we have lawyers, we have CEOs, we have nonprofit directors, we have senior management, we have the totality of all experience represented in these volunteer advisors, some of them veterans, some of them civilians. And so we've essentially made this online mixer that says, hey, advisee,
very cool.
You can connect with any of these folks and ask them any damn question you want. Keep it professional and do know who you're speaking with, because they could represent an opportunity. Be candid, be forthcoming, but also understand that, hey, there might be an opportunity there and you still want to present your best foot forward. And so the platform supports email, of course, and supports voice and video calls and the scheduling of voice and video calls all through the platform. So no one ever has to say, what's your email? Do you want to meet by Zoom, FaceTime, Google Meet? It's all within the platform. So it's a one-stop shop for advice, applying for jobs, finding those resources. We actually took some time to do this. We found like the top 100 veteran-friendly employers that are also part of the Fortune 500 list.
Wow.
They all have veteran hiring programs or specific veteran career pages. We linked directly to them. We went to the Yellow Ribbon database, schools that match GI Bill funding. And we also found U.S. News and World Report's top 100 schools. And coincidentally, and thank goodness, the top 100 U.S. News World Report schools, like 98 of them are all participating Yellow Ribbon universities. But they don't represent all 50 states. They actually represent a portion of that. So we expanded it, and we have a resource list of Yellow Ribbon schools, the best Yellow Ribbon schools in all 50 states. So why not go to university, leverage your GI Bill, get some support, get BAH funding, go to school for free and get a undergrad or graduate degree. We also have a list of other veteran service organizations, about 100 plus folks in there, to your point about mental health, medical health, recreational therapy, citizen leader, civic engagement, leadership, you name it, they're in there. And then we also put together what I think is a pretty bang up resource directory of city, county, state, and federal government offices serving veterans. So we have all 50 state level departments of military and veterans affairs. We have like 30 of the most veteran populated counties in there. We have about 30 or so of the most populated veteran cities, all directly linked to their veterans pages. So you can't enter the platform and not be connected to a person or a resource within seconds that can be of immediately helpful. I mean, immediately. So, yeah.
Fascinating concept. I actually need to spend more time on your website or on that platform to understand it better, because shame on me for not being more aware of that. But I'll do that here in the very near future. And listen, I'm even more proud now to be a part of the HeroesLinked team. So that's awesome, man. That's absolutely awesome.
Go ahead, David.
I was going to say our IP is the kindness and the volunteering of our advisors. If someone said, hey, it's like Masterclass. Masterclass monetizes the ability to access top professionals from a number of 40, 50, 60 different industries and hear directly from the Annie Leibowitzes or hear directly from the Spike Lees about how to create a film, or Ron Howard's. This is hear directly from a retired Army colonel who's worked at the White House, for God's sake, who's worked at McChrystal Group, who's got his own company and who's now volunteering his time to be a podcast host. You are one of the many that represents extraordinary inside experience that someone could tap into and say, what have you found, and gain that actionable intel. I'll say this really quickly as an example. So when I was trying to create my nonprofit, Honor Media, I thought I did my due diligence. How to form a nonprofit, how to get IRS 501c3 status, what the state level requirements are, what the federal level requirements are, you name it. Read everything, read it twice, spoke with other executive directors and nonprofit space, did everything possible. But when I was looking to file, I admit I was a little bit intimidated. And so I reached out to some legal teams for pro bono help or some volunteer help. That didn't work out. I reached out to some other folks. And actually, Antoinette Balta, Veterans Legal Institute, who's executive director and founder there, who also won a VETI for her work in the veteran space for legal services. She was getting ready to go on a trip, and I consider Antoinette a friend and an inspiration and a leader in the community and a mentor to me in many ways. And she said, hey, look, I'm going on a trip. If you can wait a few days, let's talk about it next week. Or you're a big boy, David, go to the site and do the following. Here's my advice and go file. And so I started the initial paperwork, but there were still some hiccups I had. And it wasn't until I spoke with someone else that said, look, if you want the inside scoop on how to get a 501c3 status faster than normal, there is the, oh my God, I think I've already forgotten it. It's the 1023 form. There's also 1023 EZ. Like the IRS has all these easy forms. Like instead of a 20-page application, you can do a 4-page application. And I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me about this? The IRS websites didn't tell me about that. All the Facebook nonprofit groups didn't tell me about that. No one told me about that except another veteran who had his own. And so I took his advice. I found the form. I applied. I got funding for the application process. And 2 weeks later, I had my nonprofit status. It's a long-winded way of saying sometimes the insight and actionable intel can come from unexpected places or peers, despite your own best efforts to solve the damn problem. And so I think like Google represents, I think there's a collective wisdom that we can share with each other that can dramatically make things more efficient or not have to reinvent the wheel every time we go through it. And so that's what HeroesLinked, I think, in a long-winded way really represents, which is leverage my experience, leverage my network, leverage my connection, take it, go forth and conquer. And it costs me nothing as an advisor to do.
A social media network where people help each other.
Yep.
I wish
that's a new thought, isn't it?
That's a new one. Yeah. I wish certain groups, we'll just say they rhyme with Schmashbook and Schminstagram, Schminkton, and keep going. Schmick. All right. I wish they would lose. Some of these other ones would learn how to use it for the betterment of mankind and not just be a unrealistic human highlight reel where people can air their thoughts and not take any action. Just remember this I said I was an optimist. And actually, David, you're proving my point because that I'm about to make. I always tell people that historically it shows technology always advances faster than our ability to use it correctly. Actually, the military is the greatest example of that when you look at advanced weaponry and different wars throughout American history. In my opinion, I have to say that David is someone who's using the technology correctly, right? To help others, to find answers, to network. It's amazing to me that we live in a time period where essentially it's limitless education and information for free 24/7. And we spend it talking about Kim Kardashian. So I like that you're doing it the right way, in my opinion, again. And I'm actually being serious with Howie here, that is a phenomenal resource, right? Education is wonderful, but learning from your peers is the fastest, most efficient, and best way to learn something quickly from the people who have done it. You can't put a price on experience for that, man.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Napoleon Hill's mastermind principle, right? I mean,
right.
Go to the people who have done it and succeeded at it, right? And learn from them.
I forgot to mention Schmitter. That was the other one I forgot. Can't forget Schmitter. Sounds like we're going to temple with Rabbi Schmitter. All right. David, I do got to ask this question too. You are the founder of Honor Media. It's a nonprofit media production organization. We talked about this earlier, a publishing platform about the veteran community. So tell us what prompted you to start Honor Media. Again, you said it before. It's an LLC. I'm sorry, not LLC. It's a nonprofit, and what the organization does for veterans and nonprofit veteran services organizations to better serve the vets.
Yeah. The very short answer is, where do the thousands and thousands of veteran service organizations, where do the companies that have veteran hiring programs, where does corporate America connect with the veteran community? How does America connect with the veteran community for the benefits, the services, the opportunities they have? And what I realized quite quickly was there isn't I think I even looked this up recently, like, there is no like veteran.com. There's a military.com.
Right.
There's definitely like military times, and there's obviously the Air Force Times and more. And we know the folks behind these media entities, and they do a great job. But I guess what I realized quickly was it's difficult for America to connect with the veteran community and for the veteran community to connect with America through media. And the folks who are doing good don't have necessarily an outlet to promote their own programs and services, nor do veterans have their own ability other than Schmick Schmock and Schmitter and LinkedIn and Schmacebook to say, here's who we are and here's what we're doing. And so everyone's fighting for everyone's attention and eyeballs. And so what I realized was, why not create a nonprofit in the vein of the NPRs and the PBSs of the world? We convert donor dollars into content for awareness and for action about our own community, and honestly tell our own goddamn narrative. Because after a certain point of the news and documentaries and fiction filmmakers, at a certain point we have to fucking stand up and say, that's not accurate, that's not us, and we have a different perspective about who we are, and also about what we accomplish for the world. Like, I'm not choosing to be defined by what I did, to your point, Howie, 15 years ago or 12 years ago. Like, that is not the single most significant component of my life. Who I am today and what our community is today, the leadership roles we continue to do, the family people that we are, the advocacy that we lead with, the impact that we have outside of uniform is not only longer in scope, but greater in impact in so many ways than what we did for 2 years, 4 years, or even 30 or 40 years in uniform. And so it's a long-winded way of saying Honor Media serves as a media entity to other veteran nonprofits to create their content, to push out their good word, to help with PR, to broker media relationships, as well as to convert donor dollars into content about us and present a narrative about us that's otherwise not known and that otherwise doesn't have a digital home. Here's a very simple example. Where does Noah Courier, when I think of one of our nation's biggest badasses, he's a paralyzed Marine who created the Noah Courier, the Oscar Mike Foundation, which supports veterans through adaptive sports. And he was also connected with Paralyzed Veterans of America, and he's adaptive sport himself with wheelchair basketball. And he also has his own clothing company, Oscar Mike. And so where does Noah Courier's good deeds of the Oscar Mike Foundation live? Well, of course, they live on his Facebook and they live on his own media and his own website. But where else do they live besides that? So you've got a guy, to your point, that can help solve the 20 a day, that can help ameliorate a huge problem, that can give someone who's sitting in a wheelchair, who's got a new prosthetic, or someone who's feeling down and out, an opportunity to connect with the community. Where does someone go to find out about him? Because Lord knows there's a lot of agencies who aren't running a story on the daily. So, and multiply that by 1,000, and that's where Honor Media tries to exist on the content creation side.
It's amazing work you're doing. Go ahead, Howie. This is amazing.
Well, I look, first of all, I'm taking a ton of notes here because you've mentioned organizations, names of people that I will definitely follow up and reach out to. And I'm also going to actually send an email or a text or a Slack message to Bob Morgan and ask him I want you to explain to him Friday when you meet what you just explained to us. I think there is a tremendous amount of synergy that can be created between Honor Media and Pivotal Moments, right? So we're after the same things. We're not competing with each other. We will not compete. What we're going to do is we're going to partner and help make each other stronger and better and reach more people. So, but I would love for you guys to have that conversation when you meet Friday morning. So I'll kind of tee that one up for you. Okay.
This is an exciting time because I think the community has realized that, and we have leaders like Bob, who's got his own extraordinary media background and his own CEO and entrepreneurship background. We need talented folks to come in. I don't want to say disrupt the space, but help tell the stories of our community, lest they be told by someone else. And those aren't always accurate.
Right. Well, listen, one thing we definitely share, our organization share, is people will listen to and be moved by stories. Lee has made that point abundantly clear to me when we first met. It's the whole point. That's how you make your podcast much more meaningful to your audience. And that's really what Honor Media and Pivotal Moments is all about, is telling stories to get a point across to drive action. Yeah. Right. I mean, we're after the same things here, man. So let's look for a way us to work together and tackle this one together, and it's a win-win for everybody, right? So cool.
So speaking of telling stories, we've come to the point of the show.
Timely? Is it that time?
Yeah. So David, we do have one more question left, but before it's become commonplace on this show now. Before we get to the last question, I create a potential book title for all of our guests. Okay, so when you come on this show, based on what you say, I create a book title for you. So should you ever write a book, all right, or if you have written a book, I have potential titles here. So I actually have 3 here for a change. The first one I had here doesn't really work. It was just social media sucks. And then I realized that was more of a declarative statement by me, and that's not your book cover. So the one for you I have here is How the Air Force Brought Me Back to Earth. Right? That's a good one, right? Nice. I got another one here, Howie. So this goes way back to the beginning of the episode. With that story you told about, was that an Air Force officer that was with you guys? Remember that, Howie?
Oh, in the on the Ranger Patrol?
Yeah. So I I don't know his name, but his book title is You Want Me to Do What? My Time with the Army Rangers. That's his book. You want me to do what?
Every Army soldier says that every day they're in uniform.
David, I will tell you though, again, this is a little bit more of a comical segment that I run, but I was really inspired by everything that you've said, everything
Absolutely.
that you're doing. We always talk about, Howie and I have discussions off the air about even doing this podcast it's not enough, right? More action needs to be taken. And you, sir, are taking that action. And I applaud you for it. It's inspiring. And as Howie said, I hope that there is a partnership in the future that we can assist you with that. Now, with that said, I do have to ask you the final question. This is where the humor turns down a little bit. We get more real again. Pivotal Moments, our parent organization, it seeks to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. That's why we're here. So how do you personally define mental fitness? And please share the things you do to strengthen your mental fitness on a daily basis.
Yeah. So it's an excellent question. It's a profound question, and there's something actionable from it. And I'll say on the Vetty speech, Saul Ravandi, I think, is a superhero. She, through the Academy of United States Veterans, I think she's done something wonderful in bringing the veteran community together and recognizing veteran advocacy. And even though I wrote a speech in advance, all that seemed to fly out the window on stage. But it gave me the chance to think on my feet and to really bring up what was hidden. And what I was able to state publicly and even voicing it to myself was last year, and again, some recent years have been quite challenging and very much to me. And I didn't realize last year I was the frog in the pot. I was the frog in the boiling water. I didn't realize my levels of stress were increasing the way they were, because I thought there'd be a line in the sand. There'd be a delineating factor that says, oh, I'm officially stressed. Something isn't working. Something's not going on. Like, if it was the Air Force, your uniform isn't within compliance, or you failed this component of your check ride, like there'd be something clear, objective, obvious. There was nothing objective about what I was experiencing. And so there were some indicators that I wasn't so happy last year. I wasn't doing well. I started saying, I don't care a lot, to the most mundane things. I think I started saying, I don't give a shit. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I didn't, even though I was voicing it and feeling it, I didn't realize that was a sign. I started looking less towards others for solutions or support or understanding or connection. And I saw others as more of the problem. Last year we were the media did a very good job of this overly loud drum of a divided America, and differences of opinion are dividing us. And there wasn't a permission structure to connect. And even on the same side, I believe this still now, the moment I'm one, I'm not the other. And the moment I'm one is an us versus them. And so I like to be as centrist as possible, or I like to be as I don't want to label myself in any regard whatsoever. I don't want to say I'm left, I'm right. I'm not a blue dog. I'm not a this or that. Like they're at least in LA, where it's a very sexually open-minded community, we're talking about non-binary and queer and all these things that are disruptive to our heteronormative things. And I'd love for us to consider something similar in a political scope. I don't have to be this or that, but my point is, last year I didn't recognize that I was going down a dark and deep rabbit hole of mental unhealth. And it wasn't until I think I posted on Facebook, and I was here in this office, and my partner, we're working from home like everyone else. My partner was in her office, and I just posted on Facebook without, and usually we're somewhat strategic about our social media sort of thing. And I posted a real call to help saying I need help. And no one responded. And Tanya immediately came over here and she's like, hey, you want to talk? And that gave me the opportunity to reveal what was on my mind and the pain I was feeling. And it's kind of surprising because here I am in the veteran advocacy space touting solutions and touting things. And I'm running and I'm doing all sorts of shit. And I'm like, what? I'm susceptible to this too? I didn't think that. Why would I know that? That's like doctors who are in ERs. Like, I solve problems. I don't, I'm not susceptible to this. That's why, there's masks and barriers and gloves. Like, there's a clear delineation between you and me. And so, and I think that's when things turned around and I realized, oh shit, I need to make some real changes. And so, I started in the actionable thing. I started spending a lot more time outdoors. I've always been a big motorcycle fan. I've always, on-road, off-road. And so I went out and bought a motorcycle, and I started riding off-road, which was fitness and sunlight and, and excitement and exhilaration and the time to be peaceful. I started running much more. And then I started purposely searching for that content that I would know would be more uplifting and relationships that would be more uplifting. I started creating content personally that I don't always have the time for to voice my opinion in a civilized way, but with a clear call to action that was unifying rather than divisive. So I had to take several steps. Otherwise, I was just part of it. And I think we can all be susceptible to it without even knowing. So I guess the short answer there is friend, family, loved one. I don't care if it's a Tinder or a Grindr date. Find someone, find something, find a community, find a group. They don't have to be like-minded, but find something where you can at least gain what you need to gain to believe in the goodness of others, or to believe that life is worthwhile, to believe that when the sun rises, that's a cause for happiness and excitement and well-being rather than dread of what's to come for the day. So connect. And it's a paradox because that's the same thing that's pushing us to isolation is the same thing that can solve our those really profound feelings.
Hey, David. So the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for being so transparent. Thank you for being so candid and honest with us and the audience. Thank you for being so vulnerable. And I love you for it, man. I really mean that. I love you for it. I absolutely, from the bottom of my heart, mean this. And look, it speaks to another thing that we have to talk about, right? And I don't care whether it's military, it's corporate, it doesn't matter. But there's this thought and feeling amongst a lot of us who have been in or are in leadership positions, right? That we have to be stronger than everybody else. We have to take care of everybody else. We have to do this for everybody else. And the fact of the matter is we're just as human, just as frail, just as susceptible to all this stuff as anybody else is. And you have to take care of yourself. Yeah. Right. And I am so glad that you recognize that. I'm so glad that you reached out, and I'm really glad that someone reached out to you. And I think the lesson all of us have to take from this is that all of us have our ups and downs, and some go higher, some of us go lower, and we all experience different things, but we all have our ups and downs. And the sooner we recognize when we're in a downward trend is get some help. Yeah. Ask, reach out, talk, and I don't care who you are, what your position is, how much money you make, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a general officer, whatever leadership position you're in, you are human, and we all need help sometimes, yeah. Right? Yep. Me included, right? Me included. And Lee knows this. We've had many conversations about this. I've had my challenges, and David, you know what? I promise you, I talk about this right the other night, right? You challenged me, and I just realized that, God damn it, I promised you this. So, hey, look, I've had my challenges too, in uniform, out of uniform, and there are times where, I don't ask for help. I don't do the things I should do to take care of myself. And this isn't about me. I'm just using myself as an example, just like you did. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can take better care of others. And that's not meant from a selfish point of view. It means that if we are healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, pick one of them or all of them, if we take care of ourselves, we are in a much better position to help others. Yeah. And we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our family. We owe it to our friends. And God darn it, if you feel like you need help, then talk to somebody about it. And so God bless you, man. Thank you for sharing that with us. I can't think of a more meaningful way to close this than with that. And again, I mean it. I love you, man. Thank you.
Likewise.
David, look for my Schminked invite. We'll be friends on Schminked. No, there's nothing I could say that Howie didn't just say. So I'm going to agree with him, and I love you too. I guess I could say that too, but. No, David, it was a pleasure having you on today. Thanks for being here.
I'm grateful, guys. You gave me time, and that's invaluable. You gave me time to voice my own feelings and to grow and learn from you. So that's I think that's what makes people better. So thank you for that. Much love to you.
Cool. It goes both ways, and we're going to keep doing that. And you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. You can learn more about the organization at pivotalmoments.org for more inspirational, entertaining, and educational content. For Howie Cohen and David Tenenbaum, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time on Life After the Military. Have a great day, everybody.